So, just under 2 weeks ago, I was at Silverstone watching the British Grand Prix, witnessing Lewis Hamilton's first win in nearly 3 years. Whilst over there, I also happened to catch the F2 feature race as I only attended the Sunday action. But whilst watching the race, I noticed something was a bit off. In fact, it was something I had noticed for quite a while before I went to Silverstone. Now, when doing research for this video, it was quite surprising to me how barely anyone on YouTube seemed to be talking about this issue. In fact, at the time of recording, I've only seen one person mention this issue. Yes, there have been videos talking about other issues F2 have had, such as the travel costs, especially with the series going outside of Europe, the reliability of the Mecachrome engine that's in the back of the F2 car, and the fact that even though the series promotes itself as a spec series, meaning that everything such as the car and engine is equal, it isn't actually equal. However, apart from that one video I mentioned earlier, I haven't seen anyone on YouTube talking about this particular issue, and the only time I have seen people talking about this issue is on Reddit and Twitter. My issue is to do with the engines, and how they aren't actually equal. Now, yes, whilst other content creators on this platform have talked about the Mecachrome engine, and also the fact that the series isn't actually equal, despite the series promoting it as that, the issue I'm bringing up is different to the issues they brought up. Specifically, how there is a disparity with all the F2 engines on the grid, which in turn make it difficult to judge all of the drivers' talents. I mean, the fact that Oliver Bearman will be in F1 next year with Haas, despite being low down in the standings, I think is proof that there is a problem. So, with that being said, and just like with my videos on Formula E, WRC and BTCC in the past, here is the current issue with Formula 2. But first, let's go back a few years to when the seeds for this issue were first planted. At the end of 2016, the GP2 series was renamed as the FIA Formula 2 Championship in order to ensure the name of the series kept in line with Formula 1. To be honest, looking back, I have no idea why they didn't call it Formula 2 in the first place. Despite the change of name, the car remained the same from the previous year and was the same car that was used since 2011. However, midway into the 2017 season, Formula 2 revealed to the world that from 2018, the series would be having a brand new car that looked drastically different compared to its predecessor. But outside the look of the car, one of the big talking points was the Mecachrome engine in the back of the car, as gone was the 4-litre V8 108 engine, and in its place was a 3.4-litre turbocharged V6 340 engine, which was done to keep in line with what Formula 1 was doing, as they had also switched to a V6 turbocharged engine back in 2014. However, unlike Formula 1, F2's engine wouldn't have hybrid technology and would also have more litres than F1, with its parent series having 2.4 litres instead of 3.4. But come the first meeting of the 2018 season at Bahrain, things didn't seem that well, as before the formation lap got underway for the feature race, which back then was race 1 instead of race 2, Artem Markelov in the Russian time car, nowadays known as Invicta Racing, would stall on the grid, meaning he had to start from the pit lane. Now normally, you would think this was a case of driver error on Artem's part, but when Antonio Fuoco in the Charus also stalled after the race got started, something seemed off. And when more drivers ended up stalling over the next few meetings, it became clear that it wasn't a driver related issue, and more an issue with the car itself, so much so that at both the Spielberg and Silverstone meetings, the drivers ended up doing a rolling start, as opposed to a standing one. The reason for this stalling issue was down to the car's electronics, specifically with the launch control. The launch control issues that the car was having was down to one of two problems. One being that there were inconsistencies with the clutch's bite point, which in turn made it difficult for the drivers to set it up correctly and get themselves a perfect start without stalling the engine. The other problem that would often occur was when the clutch itself was engaged with the driveline, which for anyone who doesn't know what a driveline is, because I myself had to look this up when doing research for this, is basically the mechanism that transfers the power of the car from the engine to the wheels. Thankfully, from the 8th meeting onwards at Spa, the issue was finally solved after months of the electronic system being rewritten and recoded, along with further updates to help make the car's launch control easier to use. However, there was a much more bigger problem lingering for the engines outside of the clutch issues. For the last few years, and even with this current specification of F2 car, the Mecachrome engine has had a tendency to be very unreliable, with drivers retiring left, right and centre due to these issues, which in turn has cost them points in the championship. For example, in 2021, Yuri Vips suffered from numerous amounts of mechanical issues, with some even arguing that without them, he could have been fighting for the title with Oscar Piastri. Another example comes in 2022, where Teo Pourchaire, who was challenging Felipe Drugovich for the title that year, would get played by reliability issues, which due to the amount of points he lost, would cost him from mounting a serious threat for the title, with some even arguing that without them, he could have given Drugovich a run for his money. Although in my opinion, and even a friend of mine on Discord agrees with me here, I think without those mechanical issues, Drugovich would have still just beaten Pourchaire to the title, as there were times where Pourchaire himself was inconsistent. At least he got his redemption in 2023 though, so that makes up for 2022 at least. Just a shame like with Drugovich that he's not in F1, which is also another issue with the series, but that's not what this video is about. Despite mechanical issues still being prevalent in the series, it hasn't been as bad as what it was in 2022. But as you might expect, there was another issue that crept up with the Mecachrome engines that became more prevalent in 2024. Before the 2023 Monza meeting took place, Formula 2 revealed that the series will be having yet another new car from 2024 that aimed to keep in line with the current design of F1 cars. Bit ironic that F1 will be having a regulation change in 2026 that will see the look of the cars change once again. In my opinion, the current F2 cars look ugly, especially the rear wing it has, but that's not the issue I'm talking about here. Throughout the season, it became clear that despite the engines being advertised as equal, they were not equal at all. It has been well documented for a while that there is a disparity with all the engines on the F2 grid, and the 2024 season is where this issue has been the most exposed. I mean, the fact that both Roman Stanek and Taylor Barnard, who are both 20th and 21st in the standings, have both had a win this year, I think shows you that there is an issue here. Not to mention the inconsistent run of results each driver has had this year. Take for example Victor Martins, who in my opinion has been one of the most screwed out drivers due to the engine disparity. If you look at his results from the first 5 meetings, you will see quite a lot of low point scoring races, and also races where he finished outside of the points. And this is coming from a driver who won the Formula 3 Championship in 2022 and had a decent first year in F2 in 2023, finishing 5th in the standings. However, at the sprint race in Barcelona, Martins put in a fantastic drive to record his first win of the season, which in turn lifted him up a few places in the Drivers' Championship, as before the meeting in Barcelona, he was down in 20th. The Prema drivers have also had their experience of being screwed over by the engine disparity. During the Silverstone feature race, which I witnessed in person, Behrman had a cracking start which lifted him up to 2nd, and at one point was challenging Victor Martins for the lead. However, as the laps went by, Behrman continued to tumble down the order, to the point where he finished the race in 7th, with teammate Kimi Antonelli having a similar experience during the sprint race at Barcelona, the same race Victor Martins won. But by far the driver that has been screwed out the most when it comes to this engine disparity is Ritomo Miata. Last year, Ritomo was crushing it over in Japan, becoming the 5th driver in history to win both the Super Formula and Super GT titles in the same year. However, in his first year in F2, which has subsequently made him the first autistic driver to take part in the series, which as someone who is also autistic is great to see, has struggled to replicate the success he showed in Japan, despite being with a top team like Rodin, with Ratomo being quite vocal about this during pre-season testing. So I guess the question on everyone's mind is, why is there an engine disparity in the first place? Well, it's all to do with one company, Mecachrome. It's quite clear to me that the build quality of all the F2 engines on the grid is very poor, as some engines for whatever reason seem to wear out a lot quicker than others, which in turn means we get this engine disparity and also reliability issues as well. But that's not the only reason that we are getting this engine disparity, and in fact when it came to researching this topic I was quite shocked to see this. Now, to add a disclaimer, I should emphasise that what I'm about to say may be speculative, as I'm not 100% sure if this is true or not. Perhaps you guys can tell me in the comments if it is or not, but I just thought I would mention that, and is also the reason I'll be saying the word apparently whilst talking about this. So apparently, before each season begins, a representative for each team on the grid will head over to the Mecachrome factory in Blagnac, France to draw a random number. That number represents the two sets of engines that they will get for the season ahead, one for each driver. Now, why do they apparently do this random draw, I hear you ask? Well, it's because some of these engines that they may get allocated with could be down on power. Now, if a driver or a team suspects that an engine of theirs is down on power, they can send a request to Mecachrome to do a diagnostics test to see how much power it is producing. If it is found that the engine is down on power, they can be given a new engine. However, if the dyno test doesn't find any issues with the engine, they won't be given a new one and will have to stick with the engine that they sent for a diagnostics. This, however, comes at a cost, as to request a diagnostics test, they will need to cough up around €50,000. €50,000 that they won't get back, even if it is found that there are no issues with the engine. And given that the engine disparity has been worse this year than it has in previous seasons, it suggests to me that teams are not brave enough to request a dyno test, as they may believe that the equipment Mecachrome use to examine the engines may be faulty. But either way, if it is true that teams can get allocated weak engines from Mecachrome themselves, why is that even a thing in the first place? Logically, you would think that Mecachrome would do everything in their power, no pun intended, to ensure that before each meeting, every engine on the grid is equal, and if they aren't, they should give the teams a new one to ensure everyone is on a level playing field. But for whatever reason, if this is true, they don't. Now, stuff like this doesn't sit right with me, and I hope that what I read during my research for this isn't true. But if it is, serious questions need to be asked as to why this is allowed to happen. Now personally, I honestly think if F2 were wise, they would look for a different engine manufacturer to provide engines to F2. But given that series owner Bruno Michel has strong connections with Mecachrome, I sadly can't see that happening. Let me know what you think of the engine disparities in the comments below, and tell me if what I have mentioned in this video is actually true or not, because it really boiled my blood when I read that. All I can say is thank God teams like Ferrari and Haas are seeing right through this engine disparity, given that Ferrari Jr. Oliver Bearman was announced to be a Haas driver for next year, and thank God Mercedes are seeing right through this as well, if the rumours are true that Kimi Antonelli could be at either Mercedes or Williams next year. But we will have to wait and see about that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in 2 weeks time for my next video, which will be a driver predictions video for the 2025 Formula 1 season. Till then, take care.